Imagine with me for a minute that you've gone out to Buffalo Wild Wings with your best friends. Now, your best friends in this case are folks that are unchurched and mostly unbelieving. And you've gone to Buffalo Wild Wings to sit and watch a game or just to hang out, and you're going to have your wings and a soda or a beer, whatever it is you're into, some celery sticks and some carrot sticks, and you're sitting back and the trivia game starts. You thought, this will be great. So you join up, you create a team with your table mates, your friends, and the game starts. And as usual, you know about half the questions. And the other half are like, really? Who in the world would know that stuff? But then comes a question that, by golly, you can nail. What does the word gospel mean? And you ring in instantly and you say, it means to good news someone, or to have good news, or to share good news, to let people know what the good news is. You good news them. And bing, you got the answer right. But later on, the game's over and maybe someone's had a beer or two or three, and one of your unchurched friends looks at you and just in a wondering kind of way, they ask you, so what is the good news of the gospel? What are you going to answer? What are you going to say to them? If you're like most church people, you're going to share about Jesus. You're going to tell them how Jesus loved them so much that he came to earth, that God sent his son to earth so that he could die for their sins, and that Jesus offers reconciliation. He offers hope through God for the forgiveness of sins through his death, through his resurrection, and through his sitting at the right hand of God the Father Almighty. And that's the good news. And your friend's going to look at you and go, huh? You see, because that really is good news. If you're a theologian, or if you're a preacher, or if you're on your deathbed, I guess, if you're laying there thinking you're about ready to cross over and you're not sure what you believe, that might seem like really good news. But for the average person, that's not good news. At best, it's just news. It's facts. It's Bible study stuff. It's stuff that you believe and maybe they've heard and maybe they basically believe. I mean, they believe they agree that's what happened. Or they reject it outright. But good news? That's stuff for theologians, for Bible study stuff. It really isn't good news for the average person. And in fact, for most people, what we consider good news, when you really get back down to it, the way the church acts, the way the average Christian acts, what we consider good news is more than just news or information. It's really bad news. It's bad news for someone in our culture, as far as they're concerned, to hear this gospel, because the good news for us is all wrapped up in church. It's all wrapped up with going to church, with being the church. It's the good news of the church. And here's the good news, if you will, which is bad news, is that they're going to have to go to church. That if they embrace this good news, as you've called it, they're going to have to go to a church that is boring and irrelevant and, well, come on, the music alone is so anachronistic. It's just like so out of date. The church sings songs that were written in the 1700s, the 1800s sometimes, maybe even the 1900s. And if you get a modern church, they sing songs from the 1990s and the early 2000s. Come, now is the time to worship. That is an antique song now. Really, it is. They go to church and they hear music they don't get. They sit on a bench, by and large, that was designed back in the 1700s. Same kind of, no cup holders in those benches. And they're going to listen to a message that's delivered in approximately the same way that Jesus Christ was presenting messages back in his day. The only main difference is that we now have a pulpit and we have a sound system, and we stand up there and everyone can hear us better than they would have heard Jesus. But it's still, if you close your eyes, you don't miss anything, because it's all wah, 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 wah. It's all talk, kind of like what you're seeing here. It's all talk. It's really radio learning. Now, if you're really cutting edge, you have screen technology. You know, you have your PowerPoint presentation up on the screen, and they get to see the bullet points of your sermon. Of course, during COVID, that's completely different, because now you have the opportunity to watch on Facebook or YouTube or your website if you're really good, and often someone's holding a cell phone, and you get the jiggling around and all that, or you get lousy video, or worse, you get lousy audio, but the message is still wah 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 wah. And if you close your eyes, you don't miss anything. You see, that's called radio learning. That's what we call now radio learning. It's audio learning, but that's not how people learn so much in our society, and not today. Today in our society, we are image driven. We're video driven, and I don't mean sitting and watching a talking head like me. We're talking about plot and colors and images that move, and not just a talking head. And if you're really looking at education today, the majority of effective education today is participatory. It's two-way. Students learn from each other. It's not just the professor going, what. It's like what you're doing. My guess is by the end of this course, you're going to get as much out of this course from the other students and their posts than you're going to get from me. I'll give you some meat and potatoes. I'm going to give you some foundations. I'm giving you some foundations. But the bottom line is you're going to learn a lot more by the interaction, the give or take, the learning and seeing what others are doing and hearing their thoughts. So the first bit of good news, if you will, is bad news. And the first reason it's bad news is they have to go to church. And nobody is going, "Oh, I'm dying to go to church." Even us preachers sometimes are not dying to go to church. Okay, don't tell anyone I said that. But that's not the end of the bad news. The other bad news is that your friends sitting there at Buffalo Wild Wings, they don't need another hobby. They already got enough hobbies, and they don't need to take on another one. And here's the news flash. The majority of Christians, the majority of your church members treat their faith as a hobby, not as a way of life. Our religion, or any good religion, informs us how we are to live our life. Not just our Sunday mornings or Wednesday afternoons or evenings, not just when we're doing church stuff, but when we do everything. Everything in our lives is meant, if our religion is working right, is meant to be informed by our faith. I bet that probably none of you, and probably none of your church members, are on a regular basis falling down your knees and saying, "Jesus, I'm really wrestling with what to have for dinner tonight." That sounds pretty trivial, doesn't it? Go back and read Hunter, The Celtic Way of Evangelism. That's exactly the kind of things that they were wrestling with. How are they going to get dinner? What was going to be dinner? How are they going to, or when are they going to plant their crops? When are they going to harvest? The whole kit and caboodle, everything was wrapped around their religion. Every decision they made, every decision that we make is meant to be wrapped around our religion, our faith. But it's not. And therefore, the good news of Christianity for most people looks a lot like, it's just another hobby. It's something you do when it's convenient. You go to church if Aunt Marge doesn't show up, because then it would be inconvenient to go to church, or, if you will, tune in. We don't go to church live now because we can watch it, recorded sometime on Tuesday while we're eating dinner, or doing homework, reading a book, watching the news. We can do both, and we can hear what the message has to say, but do we worship? Yeah, no, not so much. Getting involved in another hobby? Not top list of your friends' desires. The reality is, when they look at what the church does, they realize, and your members realize, that United Way does more good than your church does. I mean, really, they do. Okay, yeah, they got more money. They got more money because more people give to them because they know that they will do more good than the church. That's one of the reasons why if you have college graduates in attendance at your church and your church members, the majority of them give more money to their alumni associations than they give to the church. And the reason they give more money to their alumni associations than they do to the church is because they know that their alumni association, their college, their alma mater, they're going to do and make a bigger difference in people's lives than your church is making. The goal or the ministry, the whole ideal, the whole purpose of the church is not to relieve suffering like United Way is. And boy, we really get that wrapped up. We're going to talk about more about that later on in the course, but we hold on to that as that our church's job is to, change the world and relieve suffering and poverty and all the rest of that. Well, not so much. Our mission, our purpose is all about eternal matters. It's about connecting people with Jesus Christ. It's about helping people become effective and faithful disciples of Jesus Christ. It's about the Christianization of people, not the churchization of people, and that's what we've become. We need and want and invest in getting people in our church. And again, that's bad news. So the question is, what is the good news to those of your friends at Buffalo Wild Wings? What is the good news that the gospel brings? Well, I can tell you. The real good news, the bottom line good news, and yes, there's a whole theological piece that Jesus died for your sins and all that, but as we said, that's good news for your theologian. But for your friends, the good news is they've got a reason to live. They've got a reason to live. One of the main reasons for Christianity, one of the main things Christianity offers is a reason to not end your life. And that really, right now in this COVID times, that's huge. Because 1 out of 4, I believe I saw the statistic recently, of those who are in their 30s or younger has seriously considered suicide. But Christianity provides a reason to live. You may be familiar with Rick Warren at Saddleback and his purpose-driven life. It was huge back in the day, huge bestseller and huge small group thing. Churches all over the nation gathered around it. And the main thing that he was saying is, you have a purpose. God has given you a purpose to live, and it's not go to church every week. It's something to accomplish, that God has created you to do good works that he created in advance. He decided in advance for you to do things that will make a difference in this world, make a difference in eternity, that you are a part of a huge plan, that God is depending on you to do something and do something incredible for others and for the kingdom. Now, finding specifically what that is for you, that's a different story. And that's a story that the church is supposed to be there to help you with. And it's not about teaching junior high Sunday school class or middle school Sunday school class. Now, it might be, but for most people, no. That there's a reason. God has created you with a reason and created everyone with a reason, a purpose, a reason to live, a purpose to live, a purpose to live out. And it's about walking with Jesus Christ, learning that purpose, and living with it. There's another little bit of good news there, and that is that there's a reason to get out of bed. It's one thing to live. It's another thing to get out of bed just ready to go and hit the day running, to engage the day, the whole carpe diem. We're not just given a reason to live, we're given a reason to breathe. We have meaning and purpose that enlivens us. That it says, I got something to do today that's important. I have something today that is going to change the world. And I'll talk in just a minute about that, but I want to share, I know what my purpose is. I don't know what your purpose is. God's created you with a unique purpose. But my purpose on earth is to help churches become effective and faithful in Jesus Christ. And when I say effective, I mean they're making disciples of Jesus Christ, not just making better disciples who sit in the pew go, whoo. I'm talking about people making disciples who make disciples. That's that's the primary, that is the main reason for every Christian on earth is to make more disciples. So my purpose is to help churches become effective in making disciples. And I do that by helping church leaders be effective in making disciples, in leading their churches to be effective. That's why I'm on earth. And that's why I get up every morning. That's why I hit the morning running in prayer and then off to the office or wherever I happen to be in writing and videoing and writing and sharing and creating, trying to help churches get this figured out. People want that kind of clarity. People want to know why they're here. You see, the good news is that there's a full and abundant life with meaning for every person. It's something that you can give yourself to that's bigger than yourself. It's bigger than you. It's there with Jesus Christ. It's huge, this awesome life that you have in front of you, that your friends have in front of you, the folks at Buffalo Wild Wings have in front of them. If they'll stop and listen and turn and follow. Now, I need you to hear that not everyone is called to be a preacher. Everyone has a different purpose. Everyone has a purpose. We're not all called to be preachers, trust me. If we were all called to be preachers, where would the grocery stores be and what would the grocery stores be full of? How would we eat? Everyone has a different purpose. God's created everyone on this planet for a purpose. Now, someone may have a purpose to grow wheat or to grow beets or to grow soybeans or to raise cattle. And they don't do that just to feed people. Oh, that's an incredible calling. But they're called to help feed people and get food to those people in the name of Jesus Christ and connect them to that bigger purpose, to the purpose of living in and with Jesus Christ. You see, everyone has a God-given purpose. And that's the good news. And it's more than just they have a purpose. They have a reason to live. You have a reason to get up and out of bed. You have a reason to share the full and abundant life. The question that we have is, how do we connect that with our unbelieving friends at Buffalo Wild Wings?